In this video, we're going to learn about the sum and difference formulas. And here I have the 6 sum and difference formulas. We have 2 for the sine, 2 for the cosine, and 2 for tangent. We're going to do an example for each one of them. We're going to start with example 1. It says, find the exact value. This is important. Exact value means no decimals. It means you leave the answer expressed as a fraction. If it were a fraction, you leave it expressed as a square root. If it were a square root, etc. So from the values we know about from our unit circle, we do not know 15 degrees. We know special angles. So let's make a list of some of the special angles we know. Not all of them. I like to start in quadrant 1. I'm going to make my list up here. I know that in my unit circle, we start at 0 degrees, and then we go up to 30 degrees. Then comes 45 degrees, 60, and then 90. We can go a little bit further. After 90, I get 120, and then 135 degrees. And let's go all the way to 180. After 135, I get 150 degrees, and then 180 degrees, and we could go around the whole circle. But let's stop here. So whenever they ask me to find the exact value of a cosine that I don't know the value of because it's not a special angle, I try to turn 15 degrees into values that I know of. So cosine 15, if you look at this table here, here are the 2 rules for cosine. It tells me that the angle I can split into a sum, or I can split into a subtraction. So 15 degrees, what this rule is saying is take 15 and split it up into a sum or a difference where your result is still 15. So for example, I look at my list here of special angles that I know, and I start to look and see that if I take 60 and I subtract 45 from it, I will get 15. So I can rewrite this expression as the cosine of 60 minus 45 using special angles that I know. I can also rewrite cosine of 15 as the cosine of 45 minus 30, for example. That will also still be equal to 15 degrees. I can also rewrite cosine of 15 degrees as the cosine of 135 minus 120, for example. And you can see that you can combine any of these values to give you 15, and they're all valid. So I'm just going to do this one, which is the simplest one. It's the simplest numbers. It's in the first quadrant. I don't have to think about if the values are positive or negative because all the values in the first quadrant are positive. So it's easier to use this combination of values than it is to use, for example, this one, where you have to think about if they're positive or negative, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and remove these 2 options, which are valid options, but I'm not going to use. We're going to use the simplest of the 3. And now I'm going to go back to my rule, and since I've split up my 15 into a subtraction, that means I'm going to use the subtraction rule. And it says here that when you have the cosine of a subtraction, that will be equal to, let's follow the rule. It says the cosine of u. U refers to that first angle in my subtraction. So that means I'm going to write cosine of the first angle in my subtraction, 60. Then it says multiply times the cosine of v. V refers to my second angle in my subtraction. So I'm going to multiply cosine of 45 degrees. Okay, so far I've done half of this formula. Now it says plus, so I write plus. Now it says the sine of u. Remember, u refers to the first angle, which in this case is 60. So sine of 60, and then times the sine of v. And v refers to your second angle, so that would be sine of 45. Okay, so far so good. Now I can solve this because I know the cosine of 60. I know the cosine of 45, the sine of 60, and the sine of 45 from the unit circle. So I go ahead and I simplify these values. I'm going to take cosine of 60 and write what cosine of 60 is. What's the exact value of cosine 60? Okay, so from the unit circle, the cosine of 60 degrees is 1/2. I take the cosine of 45, and instead of writing cosine of 45, I'm going to multiply by the cosine of 45, which is square root of 2 over 2. Then I have my plus sign, so bring that down. Then I have the sine of 60. What's the sine of 60 degrees? It's the square root of 3, so I take this value, and it's the square root of 3 over 2 times the sine of 45, which is the square root of 2 over 2. So now I have this expression which I can simplify. First, we're going to use the order of operations, PEMDAS. I have to multiply before I add. So now I end up with, when I multiply these two values, 1 times the square root of 2, square root of 2, 2 times 2, 4, plus, same thing here, square root of 3 times the square root of 2, square root of 6, and 2 times 2, 4. So my answer to the cosine of 15 degrees is equal to the square root of 2 plus the square root of 6, everything over 4. And this is your final answer. Let's do example 2. Cosine of 75 degrees. So again, I don't know the exact value for the cosine of 75 degrees. So I have to figure out a combination of these numbers that I do know the exact value of, so I can split up 75 into a sum or a difference that will give me 75. So for example, I can rewrite cosine of 75 degrees as the sum of the cosine of 30 plus 45. That's one option. You can have other options, but I'm going to keep this one because this is in the first quadrant and it's easier for me because of the signs. Okay, so notice that now I split up this number into a sum. As of before, I split the number given into a subtraction. So you decide if you're going to split it as a subtraction or as a sum. Okay, so as a sum, that means I need to use this rule here that says cosine of u plus v. That means I'm adding two numbers that will give me the value that I need originally. So let's see what the rule says. The rule says that this will equal the cosine of u. That means the cosine of the first angle, which in our case is 30. So it says cosine of 30 times the cosine of v, which is the second angle. So times the cosine of 45. And then we have a minus sign, so minus. And then we have sine of u, sine of v, which means sine of 30, sine of 45. Okay? And that's it. And now, since we know these values, we're going to change this and rewrite it with its exact value. So the cosine of 30 degrees, that's the square root of 3 over 2, times the cosine of 45 degrees, that's the square root of 2 over 2, minus the sine of 30 degrees, that's 1/2, times the sine of 45, which is the square root of 2 over 2. And now we simplify the expression. Remember to multiply before you add or subtract. So that will equal to, when I multiply fractions, numerator times numerator, square root of 6, denominator times denominator, 4, minus, minus. 1 times the square root of 2, square root of 2. 2 times 2, 4. So the exact value for the cosine of 75 is square root of 6 minus the square root of 2, everything over 4, and that is the final answer. In my next video, we will see 2 more examples using the sine sum and difference formulas. I'll see you there.